And we are live. Go ahead, Dragon.
Hello, and welcome everybody to our today's session. This is week 4 of the DALMOOC, and we are still on the topic of social network analysis. So last couple of weeks we spent much time in different techniques that were related to general analytics, social network analysis, and especially last week we introduced the general technique of social network analysis, different types of measures that are used in social network analysis. We also spent some time on different types of sources that are related to constructing and instructing social networks. And this week we are focusing more on the application of social network analysis in education and learning in general. So one of the concrete case studies for educational learning is this precise course. So as many of you know, we are also collecting data that are relevant for social network analysis from many different media that are used in this course. And we wanted to share some insights. Not only are those insights relevant for understanding of the course, pedagogical model that we are following, but they are also, in our opinion, very educational in terms of introducing and illustrating how some of these social network analysis techniques are applied to this very course. There are several things that are quite relevant here. First of all, it's relevant what type of media are commonly used. Secondly, who are those major players inside of different media. And another important component of that is who are those emerging nodes that are most influential inside of these different media that are used inside of this course. And finally, of course, what is the kind of pedagogical or educational value of some of these network positions. Today with us we have Srećko Joksimović and Vitomir Kovanović. They are our data czars. They are the individuals who are collecting data, who are communicating regularly with edX. They are also collecting data from different social media. They are processing these data. They are also coordinating those efforts with different researchers that are involved in this course. Srećko and Vita are doctoral students at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada, and they are quite active learning analytics researchers, quite involved in many different aspects. So Srećko and Vita, I would like to turn it over to you and ask you to tell us a bit more what's happening in social media and what's happening in social networks that are emerging in this course.
Okay, thank you, Dragan. So, Vita, would you like to start?
Hello, everybody. So, so we did analysis of the social networks in the first 2 weeks of the course, and basically we look at different. We look at the edX discussions, Facebook, Twitter, and other networks, and look at what's happening inside those networks. Now, we would like just to start sharing the screen to see the presentation that we have. So,
can you see, Dragan, the presentation?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah.
It should be.
Okay. So, what we constructed? We constructed 3 directed weighted graphs from edX discussions, Twitter, and Facebook discussions. So there's 3 separate networks. And then we calculated several network centrality measures, one of them being betweenness centrality and the other being degree centrality. Then also, for each message, we calculated several properties, linguistic properties, like, for instance, the number of words in the message, the number of average word per sentence, and other types of properties, and then calculated average for students. So if student wrote 5 messages, we averaged out properties for those 5 messages. And then we did a regression analysis between different network centrality measures and those linguistic properties to see, is there any connection between the way students write and what they write about, how it reflects on their position within the graph. And eventually we made some cool visualization that we're going to share with you today. So how we made the social graph. For edX, we use only discussion boards, and there are basically only 2 things. You can either post message or post a reply. So wherever somebody posted reply, so for instance user A replies to some other user B, we created the directed edge going from the one who posted the reply. So if I post a reply to George's message, there is the direct link from me to George. For Twitter, it's a bit more complex. So for Twitter, we have different types of interactions. So you can retweet somebody else, you can mention him in the message, or you can reply to him. But in all those three ways of interaction, we created, again, directed edge. But we also keep track of what type of edge it is. Is it a reply, or is it a mention and so on? For Facebook, it's similar. We have two types of interaction. We have likes and comments. So when somebody likes somebody else's writing, we create edge between them. And the same for comments. Now, the graph is weighted, meaning that if, let's say, I reply to George's posts, then we'll have only one edge between us, but there will be weight 2, meaning that happened twice. So I reply to his 2 of his messages and so on. So that would be the technical part, how the networks were constructed. Now, I just want to show you some of the visualizations. There were those, of the overview of the network. So this is the first stage that we looked at initially to see how it looks. So first one is for big picture for edX. So this would be the overview of the edX network, social network from discussion board, and each node has several properties. So first of all, the shape. Circles are students, and those 4 rectangles, those would be the course instructors. Also, the size of the node it represents the betweenness centrality of the node. So how important in communication channel that particular node. You probably are not able to see, but there are numbers as well, meaning how many messages each participant wrote. And the label color, whether it's white or black, indicates whether he produced more responses or initiated more responses, meaning whether he's somebody who initiates discussions and gets a lot of responses, or somebody who loves to write to somebody else. So if we zoom in to central part, we can see they're labeled for rectangles, are labeled for those 4 instructors. We see that, well, first of all 4 of them have white label, meaning that they responded more to messages from other students. And we see there all 4 of them are in the same group. So the color represents like a sub-community within the class. So all four of them are red, meaning they're in the biggest sub-community in the course. We can also see that the biggest node is for George Siemens, so he made the most replies, 154, and followed by Caroline Rosek, who she had 77, then Dragan with 51, and Ryan with 22, and other students are also having a lot of messages. So this would be just the central part of the node. What's interesting is to look also at some other parts of the network. So if we zoom into this, this was the bottom part of the graph, we see that there's certain those sub-communities, this blue one, there's students who were really, they all have a white label and usually 1 or 2 messages. They responded to somebody else's original comment. And they were producing responses. But the other students who have those black nodes, they were good in initiating discussions. So they received a lot of responses from other students. And because those students only responded to them, those students with numbers 1 and 2 and 3, they only responded to them, their betweenness is high, because they're on the those students like this one with 12. He's basically on a many shortest path, and that's why his betweenness is so high. That's why he's bigger than other nodes. Yeah, so that would be about the edX. About the Twitter, it's a bit more complex because we have 3 types of edges. Basically, everything it stays the same, but the color of the edge indicates what type of relationship was. The blue indicates retweets, red indicates mentions, and green are replies. Now, first of all, we see there are the far less replies. Mentions and retweets seem kind of 50-50, but replies are definitely way less frequent. At least for the post tagged with DALMOOC, because those were the ones that we looked at. Now, George was in the center with 199 messages to some other students, And what's interesting, now if you take into the account the type of the link, we see that blue edges are going from him to the other student, while the red ones are going the opposite way. So what happens here is basically he's using way more often retweeting, while the other students are mentioning him. At least this part of the network, he really follows very consistent pattern. Now, of course, there's certain deviation from this pattern, but in general, this is very easy to see. The third network we looked is Facebook, and Facebook is, first of all, you can see it's way less intense, so there's much less activity in Facebook, and this was expected to some extent. And we have those different two types of labels. So blue means are comments, and red are likes. So most people are like is, I think, more dominant. But yeah, in any case, it's way less active. Now, we did, after creating those visualizations, we did that with R and Python programming languages. In R, we use igraph library, which is great for doing those types of analysis. We extracted different linguistic properties, and Srečko going to talk about that part. So I'm going to move it, let him explain that.
So, Srečko and Vita, could you, I mean, just before we continue with this part, I think it would be quite interesting that we maybe return to some of these previous slides and provide maybe a bit of an interpretation. So, for example, it seems that it's quite interesting pattern that is emerging, for example, on the edX discussion boards, where students who just ask questions, they are getting higher level or better network position. So does it mean that just being able to ask the questions that resonate with others and seeking the help from right people is potentially creating a small social capital for students? Is that the kind of interpretation?
Yes, that would be interpretation for this one. So, for instance, for this part of the network, clearly this student with that has high betweenness, he posted some interesting question and he got a lot of responses. The same with the other student, that's number 2, in the center of the picture. He only wrote 2 messages, 2 other replies to other students, but he made some initial started a thread that was very interesting to other students or very helpful for them, or it was important for them, so they provided a lot of answers to him. So yes, asking questions is really, asking good questions or starting good discussions is really important in this type of learning models where you want to interact with other students. So that's a knowledge that students need to develop over time, how to ask good questions.
Okay, no, that does make sense. And asking questions which are relevant and resonate with the rest of the group or other students is something also very relevant. Obviously, I mean, and when you show that network, we also saw that the instructors were very central in the network, right? So. And you guys, I mean, you both know very well the literature of social network analysis and their use in different types of pedagogical settings, etc. So what we would hope now, and in how would you describe this type of a network configuration where instructors are very central? But we need to note, of course, that this is after only weeks 1 to 3. So what kind of further evolution we would like to see in the future of this network?
Yeah, especially here, especially in edX, you see that instructors are really in the center of the graph. So they're driving the activity. It seems that they are really the force behind activity in the course. But eventually, especially in CMOOCs, the idea is that the groups students work more autonomous and make their own small sub-communities related to some particular interest or geographic location or something like that, and the discussions move beyond that. So instructors should serve as seeds in some sense to start a discussion, but as the course progresses, we want to see less importance of instructors and more appearance of smaller sub-communities where majority student driven. So that would be the goal.
Yeah, I mean, we will see further in those other analyses how this might change, and we will see some learners that actually emerge as a quite important nodes in those discussions. And yeah, and as Vita said, we certainly hope that things will change a little bit in this course, and we will also see. But okay, let's talk about the quality of those messages a little bit later. So.
Yeah. So let's hold on that a bit. Could we just now move on to the Twitter network for a bit and focus on the type of behavior which made the one of the nodes that you mentioned, for example, George, and a few others, quite central. And you basically pointed out, and I mean, and that could be a kind of very useful advice as well for many students as well. Here is many students are unsure, especially in these types of very distributed MOOCs, what type of behavior or how to effectively use Twitter. Obviously, one type of the behavior that we would like to see here and which creates importance in the network is basically recognizing important ideas that are flowing throughout the network and trying simply just to retweet them. In that way, you are receiving certain information that may reach out to other individuals, right? So that's one type of behavior that we can see that is quite important here. But on the other hand, it's also important to get engaged into the conversation with other individuals in the network.
Yeah, probably a way to recognize some of those important, let me put it that way, important players in the network is another way to get better position in the network and
yeah, better access to better information, more relevant information, better visibility, interacting with those important nodes and so on. But yes, I personally realized that there is really a pattern of use here. Really, you see that George is mostly retweeting the student messages and propagate, basically increasing his influence to some extent in the network, while students, they want to attract attention of those important nodes. They're mentioning them, so not just the George but the other nodes as well. So, but yeah, we're just showing this part, but this is also for the other professors and the other important nodes. The same idea is happening. What's also interesting, if you go back to this idea of decentralizing, in Twitter it seems more decentralized, except for we see a lot of other nodes that are quite big, so their betweenness is very high, and this is more emphasized in Twitter than, for instance, in edX discussion. Probably it's due to the size of activity. Twitter is also more active than discussions. Well, it's probably to the nature of the media itself. But we want to see some evolution in other medias like Twitter in some sense. Twitter is maybe the most healthy from the perspective of CMOOC pedagogy.
yes, and we already showed in few of most recent studies that there are actually some communities that eventually emerge from Twitter discussions. So I hope that those few bigger nodes will eventually, group some of those learners around them and start discussing about the specific topics that might be of interest to those specific groups. But we will have to wait for 3 more weeks to see how this graph is going to evolve.
Okay, good. No, this is quite exciting, and also, I mean, when we compared it to some of the previous studies that you guys did as well with previous CMOOCs, etc., we could also see that in the beginning, typically we could see that many different nodes emerge as brokers, but then also instructors play an important role because many students are unsure how to participate in these types of courses, and in addition to that, many students are still looking for additional information. As the time progresses, many students pretty much get along with the course, or they decide to, unfortunately, leave the course, and then the pattern of the interaction slightly changes. So we'll track and see how this pattern will evolve in the remainder of the course. Okay, so let's now see and look into the kind of content. And we typically, I mean, and inside of the course as well, material, we said that in many cases we need to collect some additional type of data that is explaining why, or not necessarily causal, but more like what is associated or correlated with certain types of behavior. So in this case, can we say, are there any type of kind of linguistic behavior or quality of the language students are using that potentially is influencing the network position, and what kind of results we can see so far?
Well, I have to just briefly introduce these three quite useful tools for this kind of analysis that we used in our previous studies, LOOC, Similar, and Koch metrics. And according to some of the recent studies we did, there are linguistic proxies that actually can help us to better understand the, let me say, quality of those discussion messages or messages posted in Twitter and Facebook. But here we just focused on several categories and several metrics just to show what we can gain from those analyses. Particularly, we focus on word count, simply to show how the length of posted messages might influence the position in network, how use of different word categories such as causation and cognitive processes might contribute to the network position, message coherence, and deep and referential cohesion. Why these two? Well, also one of our recent studies showed that learners who post messages that have higher deep cohesion tend to be the central nodes in the network, as well as those who have messages with lower referential cohesion. That's quite a long story, and I'll try to explain this in more details on our next slides. But as Vita mentioned, we also did those regression analyses, and for now, we can see that cognitive processes and word counts are basically the best predictors of the network position. Well, maybe cognitive process is not that good because we have asked that quite low, but word count is probably the best predictor of the network centrality at this point of the course.
But we can, based on these results, I mean, Strachka, they are kind of quite intuitive, and I would say even expected, so to say, because the more you say, the more likely you are going to be the central in the network, right? So the more words students are using inside of the course, that's quite intuitive. Although, I mean, it doesn't explain the big proportion of the variability. Cognitive processes, I think, are still quite high. That's almost 9% of the explained variability, especially when we are talking about the adjusted R-square. So that's still pretty high proportion, which means that basically whenever we are using different types of cognitive processes and activating different cognitive processes inside of the language, that typically also indicates that it's important for higher level of social capital that students may have inside of distributed course. Yeah, thanks.
There are a lot of other categories that we analyzed, and some of them have maybe even better results, but you just couldn't fit them all into this initial analysis. But for example, what might be interesting in this slide, we tried to show this central part of the Twitter network, and on the left side we can see how word count influences the network position. But on the right side, what we can see is, our study showed actually that those causation category of words might show higher level of cognitive processing. So as you can see, those bigger nodes, those nodes with higher between centrality, might not have always indicators of higher level of cognitive processing. Why? Well, as Vita said, these might be the people who initiated those discussions, who are not quite clear how to proceed further in the course, and they want to find out something new. While on the other hand, people who tend to reply on those initial posts might provide the high level of cognitive processing at the beginning. Again, this is just the beginning of the course, so this might explain this behavior. And then again, for all networks, here we are showing just discussion forums from edX, but for all networks, all learners showed high deep cohesion in their messages and low referential cohesion in all the posts. What does it practically mean? This means that all those learners have good skills to learn in network environments. So according to our previous study, of course, we have to prove this further on. But this means that all those learners are capable of building knowledge, building connections, and share ideas within the network learning setting. I hope that's quite a good
Right. So thanks, Strachko. This is quite interesting. So in a way, what we can see is that although these students are posting quite a few messages inside of the discussion boards, we can also see that some of these measures, such as deep cohesion and referential cohesion, we also need to see that that these messages are going to the depth, and they are exhibiting inside of these messages deep level of cognitive processing, which indicates the higher level of knowledge construction that we showed in previous studies. And this is quite useful, and this is quite good. I mean, from on the one hand on the one hand, but on the other hand, that we will not be able to use these results for students, for example, who don't have so much experience here, right? So, for example, this could be a concern for students who don't have strong English-speaking skills, right? So for them, for example, to have very coherent sentences might not be that easy. The other thing is it might not be that easy for students when they are, for example, are not familiar with a different type of media, right? So for example, while it may not be that difficult to have these types of deep cohesion messages on the media that allow for example, longer messages such as discussion forums, it might be something that requires time to get used to when they are using Twitter, which is very limiting, right? And that requires basically for some students to discover these types of patterns, which can help them to detect how to better use different types of media, which can help their learning.
That's true, but according to this initial analysis, all the learners have, quite good skills to write deep, good messages, and they also quite.
So you basically found, in a way, evenly distributed. In terms of referential and deep cohesion. Oh, okay, that's clear. That's quite good. But then we need to consider that our sample here, in terms of these social network, is just limited to those who were active on different types of social media that we use, right? We don't have data of any kind for those who didn't participate.
That's true.
Right, and that basically indicates an effort. So for this study, and that's something which is quite useful here, that we can see these networks, and in terms of like at least integration, the network position, etc., that it is quite important to have certain type of a language. On the other hand, we can see that those who have that type of a language, they are evenly distributed. On the other hand, we can also see the importance of different types of behavior. That is, for example, retweeting on Twitter or etc. What we don't see from these types of studies, and we hope to be able to have that as the course progresses, but also as we are also introducing some additional techniques, like Ryan Baker will introduce in weeks 5 and 6, is we will be able to see also additional types of patterns, potentially association between, for example, some of these network positions and, for example, retention of students in the course, or the success of students to complete as many of the assignments that we have in the course and provide evidence for as many different types of competencies.
Yes, of course, this is just the beginning. And one more point, as you can see here, again, as Vita said, those nodes with higher between centrality initiated most discussions, but message coherence is higher for those who actually reply to those initial discussions. It would be interesting to see whether those nodes with higher coherence will evolve as central to some sub-communities and so on. So, yeah, basically this is just the beginning, and there is a lot of work to be done here yet, and we hope to find some more interesting.
Okay, good. Good. Thanks much, Strachko and Vita. Obviously, I mean, there are several plans what you would like to do, especially in terms of what types of themes individuals are talking, or what types of sentiments they might be interested in, or they are expressing inside of their discussion forums, and how they are associated with their network positions. Some of these types of analysis are something which will be at least partially introduced by Caroline in weeks 7 and 8, and other types of analysis that we are going to perform as the course is progressing, and we are going to report those back. I think at this point we are reaching our 30-minute point, And just if you have any quick remarks before we conclude the session.
So for now, we're going to continue analyzing those messages and the communities as the course progresses, and we will maybe report later on in the course. For now, we see that still instructors are very important in the course. Communities are not fully evolved. Twitter is mostly mature in that regard, and Facebook is still very limited. It has very limited activity. Most students, as I mentioned, were quite capable, the ones who are posting, and yeah, pretty much that would be like the recap.
Yeah, learners are doing a great job for now, I guess.
Okay, great. Great. Well, thanks so much, Srečko and Vita. It's been quite exciting to see some of these results. We are also looking forward to learning more from our students about some of these results. We will continue analyzing these results. We will also try to even connect some of these networks so that we build one joint network, but also extract data that are emerging inside of ProSolo and Bazaar, the additional collaborative types of environments where these types of social networks can be done, and of course also in terms of the overall engagement and the time students spend online in different types of activities. I'd like to thank you both for taking time to be today with us, and I would like to thank to all our learners for taking time to watch this video, and looking forward to interacting with everybody on social media. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.